What's going on, guys? Droppadooski here. Today we're going to talk about Stormbrand. Now this build has been a collaboration between myself, Sharkbait the Great, Havoc, a bunch of people in community having conversations and doing different iterations of the builds. Initially I started out with Hierophant, did that for a while, it worked pretty good, but we ended up landing on Inquisitor. Inquisitor is just so much damage. You get that free pen, and right now I think the build is sitting around 3.5 million Shaper DPS. So yesterday I did the Uber fight and we did it in one shot. I mean, I did have a couple of deaths, but that was just me being a pleb and standing in things I shouldn't. But you could easily do a deathless Uber run with this build, and it's fun. It's fun and it's easy. The boss fights are a lot easier than when I did Totems last league. So if you're a new player, this is very new player friendly. Now, it can do mapping fairly well. It's not the fastest build I've ever played. I mean, it's not going to compete with Poet's Pens or Wanders or something like that. But overall, I mean, it's not slow either. It doesn't feel clunky. You do have two mobilities in it with Flame Dash and Shield Charge, and the brands jump from mob to mob. So as you can see above, when you cast one, it'll move itself without the brand recall and kind of just keep clearing. So in maps like Lair and other things that are very linear, you cast a couple, and then as you're shield charging and you're going through mobs, the brands are just deleting everything around you. Now, some of the negatives of this build, because I like to touch on both, it can't do Elemental Reflect. So if you do roll Elemental Reflect on your maps, you're going to need to re-roll those before you either vol them or whatever. And also, players cannot regen. It's just annoying. You can do it. I do have a mana flask with me because of Mind Over Matter, and Mind Over Matter drives me bonkers. So I do keep a mana flask. So players cannot regen is something that can be annoying, but you can do it. The only thing that you cannot do is Elemental Reflect. Now let's jump over to the gear and the gems and kind of go through that, and then I'll also touch on leveling as well to make that a little more smooth for you guys. The first thing we're going to talk about is gems. Now, the 6th link in the primary damage output is Stormbrand. Stormbrand, you can have up to 5 out at a time, and those all do lightning damage. It beams out lightning damage. Now, the thing that makes Stormbrands interesting is that they can attach to enemies. 2 of those 5 brands can attach. Now, the attached brands do damage every 0.5 seconds, so it shoots those beams of lightning out against the enemy it's attached to every 0.5 seconds, and you can increase that tick by adding cast speed to your setup. So instead of every 0.5 seconds, you can make it hit with more frequency based on the cast speed that you have. The other thing to note here is that it does 50% more, not increase, but more, which is the multiplier, damage to branded enemies. This enables Stormbrand to kill bosses, making it very, very strong for enemies that have a very, very high health pool. Support gems associated with this are added lightning damage for more lightning damage just in general. You get this early so you can use it during leveling. Controlled Destruction gives you a ton more spell damage. Hypothermia is here for freezing enemies and making Herald of Ice explosions a lot more smooth. It just gives you damage overall. For mapping, it's really, really nice. Then you can also do increased critical strikes, increasing your crit chance and boosting up that damage. And then here, I took Concentrated Effect. Now, Concentrated Effect is the most raw damage you can get in this 6-link setup in PoB. The alternative here is taking Faster Casting. The nice thing about Faster Casting is it lets you get your brands out more quickly. It also increases that tick from the branded enemies. So in PoB, Concentrated Effect is the most damage. Faster Casting is kind of quality of life for mapping. I take Concentrated Effect for mapping as well and haven't noticed any issues whatsoever. So you can make that decision based on what you feel is best once you try it out. The second set we'll talk about is Brand Recall. Now, Recall lets you kind of maneuver and manipulate your brands and pull them to you. This is going to be attached with Arcane Surge. Now, Arcane Surge gives you spell damage, cast speed, mana regen. It's really, really nice and powerful. But the caveat there is that you can only proc this based on the amount of mana it costs to do Brand Recall. So you can't get this to level 20. Mine is currently at level 8, still giving us 14% spell damage and 13% cast speed, which is not minuscule. It's still really nice. But with that, you're also going to attach Efficacy. Efficacy will also give you more spell damage, damage over time, skill effect duration, all that good stuff. and then finally an increased duration support here for the Arcane Surge proc. Now, my next setup that we'll go over is going to be your shield charge. This has shield charge, faster attacks, and fortify, keeping you more tanky. I also use this additional gem slot here for Vol Righteous Fire. Vol Righteous Fire is standalone, and it's something you use to blow up stuff. And when you proc it, it's going to give you 39% more spell damage during its duration. It's a huge buff, especially when fighting bosses and you just want to put it somewhere in your gear. Over here we have a Mortal Call, increased duration, and cast when damage taken. This is your oh shit passive, right? I got hit, instead of dying, you get to be invulnerable for an extra second. You can attach whatever you like here. I went with Phase Run, as Phase Run just feels really nice and delves. It makes you invulnerable and gives you that boost to speed for a moment. Then I have Flame Dash and faster casting. This is my second mobility setup, and it's nice for getting over obstacles. Shield charge can get caught up when you hit your toe on a pebble. With Flame Dash, you can go through whatever you need to, and it's nice to have as a backup. And then we have an Orb of Storms setup. Now, this Orb of Storms attached to power charge on crit will give you up to 3 power charges with this setup in the state that it's at, and it just gives you a ton more damage. It's really nice for the bosses. You don't really need to do this when you're running maps, because you have plenty of damage to clear the maps all the way up into T16, but definitely when you go in to fight Shaper or Uber, you just toss that orb down at their feet. It's going to give you those power charges almost immediately, and then they're there for whatever it is, 8 seconds, 10 seconds, something like that, and it just makes you more powerful overall. Here I have, you could also do increased critical strikes if you have enough mana regen on your gear. I went with Mana Leech, as I don't have that, so it's nice to have a little bit of Mana Leech. And then finally, we have Herald of Ice, which is nice for mapping, gives you more cold damage and those nice explosions, as you saw in the video, and also Wrath. Now, Wrath goes with Essence Worm. We'll use this as our segue into the gearing. Essence Worm lets you put the Aura Gem in, and it costs no mana, but it increases the cost of other things. So you get yourself an Essence Worm, throw Wrath in it, huge DPS increase. And then because of the additional costs, I opted to only run Herald of Ice instead of Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder. So you're going to get yourself an Essence Worm. Next, we'll talk about the amulet. That's Choir of Storms. Choir of Storms gives you 50% increased damage, increased mana, and then increased critical strike chance based on your lightning resistance. It's a really strong amulet. We'll talk about the weapon. Doryani's Catalyst is really powerful. You get elemental damage, you get cast speed, leech, crit chance, even more elemental damage. It's just really, really nice, and it's not that expensive. And the other item, which is the big ticket, oh my god item, is the Impulse's Broken Heart. Now, Impulses are insanely expensive this league. If you can't afford one, take yourself a nice rolled rare that's going to give you, some of your resistances, some max life, other things like that. You can also go with the Carcass Jack for bigger explosions with your Herald of Ice while mapping, which is another alternative that's a little cheaper. But your best in slot here is going to be an Impulses, so it's something to work towards. All the other slots are pretty standard. You're looking for nice resistances, move speed, life on your boots, Stygian Vise to give you an extra additional gem slot here. And then glove right now, I've just got myself something with life and resistances on it. The helm, you're going to want to use the increased damage enchantment. The pen enchantment is not necessary on Inquisitor, as you get free pen anyways. So you're going to want to look for a helm that has Stormbrand deals 40% increased damage, giving you a nice increase in your overall sheet when doing your mapping and your bosses. And then outside of that, max life, resistances, potentially one of those that, reduces resistances of enemies. And then on the shield. Now the shield, right now I'm using a nice spell damage, crit, life, resistance shield. This is best in slot. Something like that is best in slot for bossing. But when you're mapping, you could take a Nesh's Mirror. It's going to give you a ton of damage and increase that clear speed even more. On flasks, obviously a bubbling flask. I have a movement speed flask right now. When I did Uber, I popped that out and took an additional life flask. Then diamond flask, you're going to want some crit chance. At series is really, really nice. It gives you a ton more damage. And then I run a mana flask because mind over matter drives me bonkers. And if I get hit and lose all my mana, I want to be able to still do something and not just die. After that, you could switch that out for something more powerful if you have enough mana regen. It's really not that expensive outside of the Impulsa. So when you first get set up, just run a nice rare. You can even get away with a 5-link and just skip Concentrated Effect or Faster Casting until you save up and get yourself an Impulsa. And from there, you're good to go. Let's jump over and talk about the tree. Now with the tree, we prioritize just focusing on beefing up spell damage and taking all the brand nodes possible. As it's a brand new skill, we want to use these new things they've added into the tree. So with that being said, we have Primal Manifestation, which increases the brand damage by 24% and increases their duration. We have Explosive Runes, increasing that damage and attachment range. Then we have Shaman's Dominion, giving you crit strike chance and multiplier for brand skills, making it really nice. And then last but not least, we have Runesmith, which gives you that increased damage to attached enemies, effectively helping to kill big bad bosses. And we have Runebinder. Now, Runebinder lets you take or have an additional brand attached. Now, that means that instead of one, you've got two, doubling that damage against bosses, making it, viable to kill Uber and Shaper and all that good stuff. Then we come all the way down over here to the right side of the tree, and we've got Trickery and Coordination. Once again, cast speed, increasing those ticks, Trickery just increasing damage, giving you some dexterity, intelligence, and then Cold-Hearted Calculation for spell damage, mana regen. Everything else on this tree is going to be survivability based. So we have quick recovery for life, regen. We have Mind Over Matter. Now, Mind Over Matter uses mana as life. So we're sitting right now at about 5,000 health. The mana pool is about 1,100 after our heralds. So we're sitting at what, 6,100 health. It's really fairly tanky, especially if you have some mana regen and some life regen there. So it's really nice with this tree setup. We're also able to take the entire life wheel. Now, one of the negatives in the setup that we're running right now is that we only have this one gem slot available. So this plus the Stygian Vibes gives us 2 gem slots. You could remove some of these nodes in the life wheel and grab this gem node here and this gem node here. This would give you even more life and whatever else you grab on those gems to add into the tree. But based on the gear that I have, it just felt more comfortable to grab that, guaranteed 5% max life for every one of these nodes that we get. So I would make the decision based on the gear that you get, and everything else is really straightforward. To talk about the route that we went in the beginning, I went straight up, came over and grabbed my discipline and training, right, to grab some life, and then immediately switched gears and came right up to Explosive Runes, right? About this area right here, you're going to be hitting level 12. So you'll get Stormbrand at level 12. Then you can swing straight up and grab this up here and grab your Shaman's Dominion. That's going to give you enough damage to clear out the axe while you're moving forward. Then come back to this side and swing over this way and come straight up and grab Runebinder. And so that way you have no problem killing, bosses during the axe or end of the act bosses while you're leveling. From there, I went straight over this way and started grabbing any of my other rune stuff. I left off, the Crackling Speed and the Throat Seeker for later. I came up and grabbed this and came and worked my way all the way over to Doomcast, and then I came down and came all the way down to Coordination, and my health was a little low at that point, so I switched gears and started cruising my way down this way to grab the life wheel and this Primal Manifestation area for more damage, increased duration, etc. So it's a really easy tree to follow. You don't have to do any crazy switching. Now we're going to talk about Ascendancy. Now, my Ascendancy order was rush to Inevitable Judgment as fast as possible. First taking Righteous Providence. Once you have this in place, you're going to be slaying. After that, it's pretty much whichever you'd like. I took Instruments of Virtue as it was nice right away. It gives you that 30% increased. And then for my fourth, I took that 16% increased elemental damage. I went with this one first as it just seemed like a bigger buff to me, but I think the last 2 order is kind of arbitrary. You want to get this right away. And as soon as you've got this, you're going to be feeling 10 times more powerful. And then as you finish up Inevitable Judgment, it's going to be ridiculous. I mean, Inquisitor is so powerful, especially considering that you don't have to take pen at all, basically, on your gear, so you're just good to go as soon as you're done with these 2. Then grab these as soon as you can. The last thing I want to talk about are a couple of tips for leveling. Between 1 and 12, you can use Freezing Pulse and Frost Bomb all the way through Act 1. Once you get through there, you're going to get Stormbrand, and your early 4-link is really easy to get. You get Added Lightning in Act 1, so do Stormbrand, Added Lightning, and then you'll get Controlled Destruction and Concentrated Effect in Act 2, so you can just toss either of those in there or faster casting, whichever one you'd prefer, and that 4-link will carry you all the way until you get your 5-link in your first ascendancy. Items that you can use is either Axiom. Axiom is really strong. It's got the cast speed, it's got crit strike chance, it's got spell damage. If you can't get a hold of one of these, Life Spread gives you a +1. You can also just craft yourself a +1 to lightning gems, wand, and also use yourself, some sort of shield with a little bit of spell damage on it. The other standard items to use is Gold Rim and Wanderlust for the boots and the helm, and if you can get yourself a tabby, if it's not your first character, throw it on and just enjoy leveling. It's super smooth, really easy, and follow those routes I talked about in the tree and you're ready to slay. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video. This is my very first build guide, so leave me some comments and suggestions below. I want to do more of these. Since I've started playing PoE, I've been basically following other people's guides, and this is the first one that we took an attempt at creating, and we did it as a community. If you've never stopped by the Twitch stream, it's twitch.tv/dropaduski. I do 5 days a week, and we're mostly playing Path of Exile with a couple of random games sprinkled in here and there. Stop by anytime. We got a pretty active Discord channel and a lot of people kind of chit-chatting about builds and showing each other, tips and tricks and just improving and having a good time. So stop by anytime. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'm going to post the Uber Elder kill right after this. So good luck in Betrayal. I hope you had a fantastic Christmas, and we'll see you real soon. Peace.